Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It's a pleasure to be here on this dais to have this discussion about Atlanta and the Black Mecca notoriety. I'm going to get up and move around quite a bit. I feel a little bit more comfortable in doing so. In numerous conversations and numerous capacities, the idea of the Black Mecca came about when Ebony Magazine ran an article in August of 1971 that stated Atlanta as a Black Mecca. As a result of this, let me switch hands with this. As a result of this, one of the things that we know and understand about it is, as Ms. Young stated, you put it in the book, the ballot, and the buck. And so how I would say it would be Black education, Black economics, and Black political empowerment and electoral politics. And what this means is Atlanta's notoriety as a Black Mecca comes from the Atlanta University Center. It parlays into the Sweet Auburn district, which was known as the richest Negro street in the world, and then that later parlays into Black political empowerment and electoral politics. However, a more nuanced and complicated analysis of Atlanta presents something unique. There have been numerous conversations around W.E.B. Du Bois here today. And it's funny to be here today, the day after an election. 4 years ago, my first year at Georgia State University, I left the University of Mississippi to come to Georgia State, and the day after the election, there was a riot that took place on campus. Barbara Combs and I were colleagues there. And what's interesting about it is I can remember the day after the election walking down the street and being comfortable. It's a different day today. And so as we get into this conversation, W.E.B. Du Bois wrote about Atlanta in his book, The Souls of Black Folk, as we nuance this conversation. Such men are not of sturdier make. There the Atlanta turned resolutely toward the future, and that future held aloft vistas of purple and gold. Atlanta, queen of the cotton kingdom. Atlanta, gateway to the land of the sun. Atlanta, the new legacies, which means the measurement of success. So the city crowned her 100 hills with factories and stored her shops with cunning handiwork and stretched long iron ways to greet the busy Mercury in his coming. And the nation talked of her striving. What Du Bois is laying out is a Black community that followed the Civil War. But then he makes this statement. He compares Atlanta, Georgia to Adelante, the dull maiden of Boisha who would only marry a man that could beat her in a foot race. There would be men that would come throughout all of the countryside to marry her, and she would beat them, and they would be put to death. But there was one suitor by the name of Hippomenes, and Hippomenes decides that he wants to marry her, but that he will cheat to do so. And so in this, he goes and he meets with an Auric, and the Auric says, well, why don't you lay 3 golden apples along the course of the race? And so Du Bois writes this. She fled like a shadow. Oh, so let me back up. Hold on. So what happens is I think they would get at a starting line and the gun shot, so it's ready, set, pow, and they take off. And so let's get back started. She fled like a shadow, paused, started over the first apple, but even as he stretched his hand, fled again, hovered over the second, then slipping from his hot grasp, flew over the river, the vale, and hill. But as she lingered over the third, his arms fell around her, and looking on each other, the blazing passion of their love was profaned, the sanctuary of love, and they were cursed. And then Du Bois makes this statement. If Atlanta be not named for Adelante, she ought to have been, because it's a city that became more concerned with mammon and greed than morality. This is a point of departure for this. And so the analysis on this is that Adelante represents Black Atlanta. Hippomenes and his golden apples represented economic gains brought on by the new industry of Henry Grady's New South. And these economic gains were enhanced by industrial education, which was preached by Booker T. Washington. However, Du Bois was here promoting liberal arts education. The finish line represented a self-determined and autonomous Black community. Now, to push that forward, the scholar Tamiko Brown-Nagin comes up with a concept called the Atlanta style of biracial negotiation. And what she presents this as being is a select group of Black political kingmakers that would negotiate deals on behalf of Atlanta's Black masses and the working class and poor, but would not have a conversation with the Black masses. And so thus, there's some conversation with the franchising of the city of Atlanta as being a deal that has been cut where few blacks reap awards, but the black masses do not. So this gives us a more nuanced way in engaging the conversation around Atlanta. Last thing I want to say is it's great to live in this city. This city is a unique place. The title of my forthcoming book is The Legend of the Black Mecca. For every legend, there is some truth. But over a matter of time, the story gets embellished. So this is where we are. Thank you.